think about collaborating and making sure that you're always in the right mindset around the people around you is what I would say. We are the sum of the parts in the environments that we spend time in. Follow your passions, right? If it's meant to be, it's up to me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the What You're About podcast with me, Chad Abood. This is where we break down how inspiring leaders and entrepreneurs have uncovered their natural gifts and used them in their career to be more successful and feel happier, especially in those moments when they felt the pressure to play it safe and follow expectations. And that's the reason why I started this podcast, is because it's what I'm most passionate about. And I think today we just have one of the most incredible examples of what this looks like. Rob Hanna. The list is going to be long, but he deserves to hear it all back to him. So we know that he's the founder and managing director of Casey Partners, one of the best legal recruitment firms you're going to find. But we also know that he's the host of the top-rated Legally Speaking podcast. He's educating, he's informing, he's entertaining us all the time. And what I love about that podcast the most is the array of guests that are on there, voices of every age and stage, doing all kinds of wonderful things for the industry. So, Rob knows how much I love his podcast, but he's also the co-founder of the Legally Speaking Club, which brings short form video and community to law firms. And we know that we need that. And he's also an investor, advisor to tech companies. And maybe even more than that for me personally, I feel grateful to call you a friend. We live an ocean apart, but that really hasn't stopped us from forming the bond, forming the friendship, checking in on each other, supporting each other. And that's meant as much to me as learning from you and watching your success over these last few years, my friend. So just wanted to say thank you so much for joining and spending the time.
Well, Chad, what a real privilege it is to be on your show. Thank you so much for the very kind introduction. But like you said, I definitely see you as a friend. And what always sticks in my mind is how we first connected over family values and the reason we do why we do, and my late grandfather and your grandparents. And I think that really touched with me. And yeah, like you said, throughout COVID, pandemics, and everything else, we've been there for each other. So it's a real honor to be on your show. And I'm just super excited to see you doing a podcast and all these amazing things that you're doing for the community. So thank you for having me.
Appreciate you. I think that I've told that story maybe once on LinkedIn, but I remember when I was first starting my journey and, Rob already had this massive platform, which is incredibly large now. But I remember he did this post about his grandfather and he was talking about what his grandfather had brought to his life and kind of the values that he instilled in him. And I think that, speaks a lot to the way that you've unleashed your gifts throughout your career. And I remember it resonated with me so closely because, I had a very similar experience with my grandfather, who had really showed me about this is how you use exactly what you've got to create the impact that only you can and to feel that fulfillment of life and your career back. And so when you did that post, I remember just writing to you, even though you probably had 20,000 followers at the time. I just remember writing you saying that really touched me, man. So, yeah, that was a beautiful moment. And I think that it's those types of things where people like you share something personal like that, but also it's, if it resonates with you, trying to connect with that person.
Yeah.
Because if you hadn't written it, nothing would have happened. But if I hadn't also written you, nothing would have happened. And so it takes that outreach, to really figure out what you really care about and to form the bonds, man. So let's get into this. I want to help the audience hear from your perspective, how you figured out through your journey, what you're about. And so you have so many things going on right now, but when you look back when you were younger, what were some of the early thoughts going through your mind? What did you deeply care about? What did you think you were going to be?
I I think I always, to sort of mirror on what you're saying with regards to my late grandfather, he ran a very successful law firm over here in the United Kingdom in the 1950s when he first started, and he scaled that out. And it was one of the most prominent outside of London, which is obviously the major hub for legal services over here. But he started tough, right? His father died when he was 8 years old. He came from a very working class, poor family, but and he had to get busy right from the start in terms of he had to, pay for his own law school fees. He had to find everything. He had to make it all happen. And I only learned so much of that journey, obviously, as I grew up as a teenager. And, I'd go to every weekend would go to his house, but he would always be making us like, are you going to wash the car? Are you going to do like some of the gardening? Are you going to do things? And I'm so grateful for that because it teaches you a lot about, much to your point about, if you hadn't sent that message, I hadn't done that post, to get something, you have to do something, right? And so I'm a big believer in that. So, and then I learned about what he did in business, and I thought, look, I'd love to have my own business one day. I'd love to also try and keep a family legacy of what industry that was in going. And I would also love, which came later on, I have to confess, to have freedom. To a degree, because I think, there's a lot of things that we all chase, but I think an element of living life on your terms and not necessarily your employer's terms or other people's terms, that was important to me, particularly as I moved into fatherhood and wanting to ensure that I could be a very present father, to do the little things that I know a lot of other partners struggle with.
That makes sense. Like, it makes sense that the freedom piece only comes later, because when you're young, you have lots of freedom.
Yeah.
It's only when you start building the career and you've never really worked in a big organization before or felt like the obligations really being put on you every moment of the day that you realize that, there's, less freedom maybe. And so it's interesting that came up in you I'm curious, when you were doing those chores at your grandfather's house and he's asking you to do this, how did you feel about it at the time? Did you think to yourself oh, he's trying to teach me a lesson here? Or were you grandpa always makes me do all the work he doesn't want to do? What was going on?
Well, I think there was a bit of carrot and stick, because we'd get £1 or something. We'd get some chocolate cake or something. So there's a bit of that sort of going. Right. So there was always a mini incentive of some kind. So I enjoyed it. But I think more than that, I was always, from a very young age, I always played sport. Right. So from the age of under 6s and under 7s, I was playing rugby. So most weekends I was surrounded by people, competitive people doing all these various different things. So I was used to a lifestyle of get busy. There's unfortunately a chap called Matt Hampson who had a very severe rugby injury and broke his neck. But he set up a charity, and he has just a great expression which I've just said, which sticks with me, is with living, is get busy living. And I think so many of us procrastinate, right? Or we think one day or something, just get busy living. So whatever I do, whether it's that cleaning or doing a business or a venture, I want to get busy living and give it absolutely everything, because, I'm just a big believer on that, one life, live it well. So, when he did those chores, I would actually quite enjoy it. And I had 2 other brothers. I was the middle guy. So I would always try to make sure that I was doing better than them, quicker than them, faster than them, all of that good stuff.
That's interesting, because I see that a lot in, from the outside looking in. And then when we talk about how you build, is that it tracked through your energy to take action, to be the best, to keep growing, that was clearly with you the entirety of your youth already. And that's cool, because, you can tell that that's something that's so natural in you, because I see it all the time. You're advising these folks, and you're investing in this, and then you're starting this, and you just moved across the country, and you have this top rated podcast. It's I think people look at you and think, oh, that must be so exhausting. But part of the magic of what I want to share is that I keep these 2 phrases in my mind over the last 12 months: for me and for you, so that we don't feel like we have to live by other people's preferences and styles, because other people might look at you and be no idea how you do it, man. That's exhausting. And I would think to myself, for you, because I think for Rob, that's probably where you get your energy most of the time, is by what else? What can we push? Where can we go? What's new? Is that how it feels for you?
I really like, I hadn't computed it like you had actually, but it's very true. I really like how you dissect that. 100%. I think, I get energy from the people that I'm around, right? We are the sum of the parts in the environments that we spend time in. And I try to be around very positive people, very collaborative people. You know, my mission to build a sort of worldwide kind of more collaborative legal community and get people to be more themselves. I know it's something you support and you do a tremendous amount with that, with your amazing work as well. But 100%, yeah, I think the work, I could not just spend 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks doing very, very little. Like that wouldn't be me, right? But for someone that is absolutely for them. Do I go on holiday and sometimes I just want to lie on the beach and do nothing? 100%. But will my brain be thinking of 3 or 4 or 5 different things in the back of its mind? It will. It's just the way that I'm wired. But the important thing about all of this is follow your passions, right? Because if you're not following your passions, that's stress that can lead to really, really negative situations. Whereas you can still be stressed, but if you're following your passions and it's something you're passionate about, you'll find the time, you'll find a way, you'll find you'll get to the solution quicker. Where I think a lot of people experience burnout and all of these various issues that we see in the workplace, and I see it in the legal world, is they're not truly following their passion, right? They're following something that they think maybe that gives them a figure of something in society that, I'm this, and that means that I'm doing well. But does that fulfill you? So everything that I do that you very kindly mentioned and listed, like with the podcast, and we've had you and you're an incredible guest, like I'm passionate about it, right? So I think everything that I try to do is I want to be passionate about it. And if it's not for me, it's just not going to be. So I'm just really, really passionate about everything that I do.
That's such a great description. I think of it as the difference between energy and the obligation. Like, no matter what, you're pouring a lot of energy into something, whether it's something that you care deeply about or whether it's something you're doing for someone else's purpose or for some external goal. No matter what, it's time. But I think the energy actually either brings something out of you or takes it away. And I've experienced it both times in my life. Like, I was, I think, a really good lawyer, both in big law and as a general counsel, but it didn't give me energy to do the actual law. What did give me the energy was helping to train other folks, building a team, learning the other parts of the business, making it more efficient. I loved that. But doing the legal work, no, it actually drained it away from me. And that can be the exact reverse for someone else. And that's what I think the important part of your message here is, that like when you choose something, you choose it for you because you love it. Clearly, content, the interviews, the video, like building community, whether that's through the recruitment, the relationships, or whether it's through, the Legally Speaking podcast. That's what you care about. And so that's why it doesn't feel as much like an obligation for you, but rather a choice. And I'm thinking, like, when you were a kid, you clearly had this internal drive, grow, be better, do the next thing. Did you also have this community, like bonding, relational piece early too?
I'd say it's matured over time. I've always liked to, even before pre-business world, right? Friends, be a good friend to people, or do more than is expected of you, right? I'm a big believer of that, and I was taught that very young in my first bar job, actually, or in the local pub. One of the manager at the time, I think I was this the pot wash or something, and he used to just say, time to lean means time to clean, right? Because sometimes people will be having breaks and doing this, and I may have done all the cleaning, but it kind of means do more than is expected and good things will happen. So I always believe that with like friendships or relationships or whatever, that's been instilled for me from a young age. But mentors as an extension of community are very important. So I had, before I set up my own business, a previous boss of mine, she instilled a really good work ethic and was really passionate about drive, and immensely successful. Hats off to her. And she used to have her own thing in her head, which was walking to work every day. There was a post box here in the UK that was a red post box, and this is an incredible mindset. Every day, as soon as she passed that post box, she's shooting from a 10. It doesn't matter if her house is burning down or something's going on. When she gets past that post box and she's about to go into the office, she's shooting from a 10. And that really stuck with me. I mean, it's not easy because life goes in, we have emotions, everything else, but that discipline was instilled in me. So every day when I used to walk past a certain thing, which was a tree on the way to work when I was going there, do you know what, maybe I've had a bad day or something's going on last night or is a really bad sleep or something, I'm going into that office to shoot from a 10. And that's kind of what I bring to every day now. Every day I try and make sure. Now I'm in my new office, as you know, it's literally just been done today. I come in here and we have a new point. I don't know what it is. I'm going to design a new point. When I'm in here, I'm shooting from a 10, and that's really important to me. And I think that's an extension of just who I am as an individual.
Yeah, it's like that. You're choosing to be where you are.
Correct.
And to focus on that. That's actually something that I've been thinking about a lot, as a father of a young child and, relationship with my partner and building my business and all these other projects that I'm working on. It's like very easy to your attention to get pulled to the opposite thing all the time.
Yeah.
And it's very draining, right? Because your brain feels like it's being sliced in half and it's like going two directions at the same time. It's tiring and you don't feel like you're giving what you want to give to each moment. And so I've really been, I like that because I've really been trying to think about that a lot about with my daughter, like be there in that moment or in that time and just play with her or whatever she needs to do, because like there will be time for the other thing. And then you will flip to that other thing. But I think you gave a phrase that's probably maybe it's like very UK centered, or maybe I just don't know. When you're saying shooting for a 10, I assume that means like go and knock it out of the park.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of give it your absolute all, whatever that may be.
Well, it's the pursuit, right? It's the pursuit. There's no perfect. And, unfortunately, and I think a lot in professional services industry is that like, that's what suffocates people, because there's this pressure that it has to be right all the time. And unfortunately it's not, because there's so many variables that you can't control. And so for me, it's always this pursuit. So I'm curious though, like clearly you've got these abilities. Did you look at this thing and say like, I've got this collection of skills, that's going to be like my greatest assets? Or were you just like running along? Like, when was it along the continuum that you were like, oh, okay, I think that's my secret sauce?
No, probably more the former. I think definitely I'm a big believer in play to your strengths. I'm horrible at a lot of things, right? So, numbers are not my game. I'm very, very bad at a lot of things. But one thing I've always prided myself on is relationships, right? And it's nurturing, starting, building. Because if you could start, everything starts with a conversation, right? So I'd like to think I'm conversational and relationship driven. I've definitely moved more into the lane of like where I feel I have these skills and try to leverage them as much as possible, because it's also what I'm passionate about. So I think for example, my grandfather always wanted me to be an accountant. I would have been a horrible accountant, right? We can just because he really respected, as a qualified lawyer, he wanted the chartered accountant. Those letters, like my brothers are chartered surveyors, and I was kind of the rogue. I was the middle child who was sort of, I'd gone into recruitment, I'd gone into sales, that dirty word sales, which I don't believe is a dirty word at all. I think sales is the lifeblood of every business, and a sales all starts from a conversation. Mm-hmm. So that's my view on that. But yeah, I would have been a horrible accountant. I can tell you I would have been fired 5 or 6 times over, because numbers aren't my thing. So once I've found the sort of talent recruitment career space, I thought, wow, this is great. And I thought this could then allow me to move into the entrepreneurial world and allow me to do various other things from the skills that you acquire. Because when you're dealing with people and people's careers and speaking to people all the time, you're getting so much wisdom from people all the time about what they like, what they don't like, what they're trying to do, what they'd like to do. And actually you're picking up all of this stuff. Like there's so much transferable skills through being in the recruitment industry that's allowed me to do all these other things.
So, okay, but this seems like a really interesting moment here, because you've got a grandfather who was like so influential in your life. You not only had the ability to do something similar in terms of building something like he did, but you also had so much love and respect for him that like you wanted to carry on a legacy. And now he's pointing you down this path that he thought was very prestigious and important. And you would think it would be very logical that you would be very swayed by that. And so how did you navigate this internal feeling that you had that clearly you connect with people? Clearly, you've got a drive to do different things that aren't always so obvious or in the box, but you've got this major influence of your life saying, no, do that thing. How did you navigate that relationship and decide to pursue something that felt right for you?
I think just what you mentioned, it didn't feel right for me to be an accountant. So, this is the thing with people pleasing is one of the worst ways to be very unhappy, right? If you people please too much, you will be on a road to unhappiness. But if you're
Mm.
respectful and respect someone's opinion but don't always agree with it, there's nothing wrong with that. That's just a healthy discussion. I can respect you, Chad, which I
Mm.
respect you to the hills, but maybe some things I disagree with. That's not a bad thing. That's a conversation, right?
Yeah.
And so when
Right.
the suggestion of maybe you should be a surveyor or an accountant, like, look, that's great. I just don't get that excited by numbers. It's not really for me. I kind of just went where I felt was good for me and what I thought was good for me. And that's what's really, really important. And that's why I would encourage a lot of people, particularly when you feel like, oh, I should be a lawyer. Generations before me have been in the industry. I should be a lawyer. I should be a
Right.
doctor. I should be a surgeon. But should you ask the question like, why? Why? What's really important to you? Because
Yeah.
85% of people here in the UK are unhappy in their jobs.
Yeah, I think, and so I appreciate you raising that back up because that's something that's really meant a lot for my own growth. And so let me like break that part down again. Is that I think, other than a certain collection of horrible things that happen in the world, most things are taste, preference, and style. And so when someone says something to you about what's right, better, should do, it sounds like a commandment. It sounds like a universal truth.
Yeah.
You should be an accountant. Being an accountant is a great job, the right job. I always struggled with that because, I'm very relational too. And when I feel a deep sense of like connection or relationship with someone, I hear what they say, especially when I was younger, and I start computing that as truth. And this little, way of thinking about it broke me away from that. And so when I hear someone say their preference framed up as a commandment, in my mind, I will say, for you. And that allows me to do what you were talking about, which is feel like I can care about you and appreciate you and see you for what you care about, but that's your thing. It's not my thing. And the reverse is for me. I try to say a lot of the time, for me, this has been the way that I thought about it so that it's not something I'm trying to force on anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. And, again, I just encourage people, go and rewind that, listen to what Chad said, listen to it, write it down and have it stuck on your wall somewhere. Because it is so important. You look around, particularly in the world of work, there's not enough of that happening. And I think that's why there's people like you, hopefully educating people and helping people to realize that.
Yeah. I think that's so right. And what I've also found when I've done that is it doesn't have to be what you think the perfect thing is now.
No.
It just has to be something, because that something will give you the momentum to see other things. What I've also found in building my own business, because I'm not an outbound guy either. My only outbound is through sharing my message on LinkedIn. And what I find is when you care deeply about something and you're expressing it in a way that matters to you, other people have more ideas about places you could take your business than you could ever conjure up on your own. And what happens is people start coming inbound. Hey, have you thought about this? Do you want to work together on this? Would you like to do this for us? And these are things you would never have thought of. And so I think that that's so critical that you're talking about how you use your gifts. But then also there's going to be this point where you were growing so much and doing so many different things. You're starting to make a bunch of money and there's all these pieces that aren't really in your skill set. And so when you were facing that struggle, how did you find a way to break through it so that, at different phases of your growth path, you were doing what was efficient and felt right for you without getting like bogged down?
Yeah, well, look, new level, new devil, right? So, whenever you're sort of going to play, there's always going to be challenges. There's going to be new things along the way. I think it's really important who you surround yourself around. I can't stress that enough because if a lot of people are saying to you, you should just go and get a job, your business doesn't work, or a lot of people are saying to you, you should just quit that job because you're never going to get that promotion, you're never going to be happy. If enough people say that to you and that's all you're consuming as information, that could potentially lead you to make a decision that may not be 100% what you choose to do. So how I've managed to get through a lot of adversities is by having like amazing wife, a loyal rock foundational outlet that has no real understanding or comprehension of what I do or care, which is brilliant because it's a great vent out. It's having mentors, and it's having a good group of solid friends and people around me. And I think, you've got to work on that circle of people that you can reach out to, because you can't do it all alone. And it's really important to know also, asking for help, reaching out to people is not a weakness, it's a strength. And people don't understand that. They're like, no, I can't say I've got a problem with someone. That'll make it look as if my business is failing. It's like, no, you've got a challenge and you're just going to find the solution. And the quicker the solution is to ask someone who knows the answer to the problem, you're actually being strategic and you're using a strength. So I really try to frame people like that, because people always think, I've got this problem, or I'm failing, or this has gone wrong. No. And also Ed Sheeran, I don't know if he's popular over you, but pop star over here, singer, he says,
yeah, of course. Yeah.
Success teaches you nothing. And it's so true. You think about it. It teaches you absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
It's the failings, it's the setbacks, it's the challenges, it's how you re-engineer, it's how you come back again. That's really what teaches you things. So as I got to these levels of like, this happened, I look back and say, well, I got through that. I did that. I can get through this. I've had really challenging situations where, naivety of just entrepreneurship and, speaking to a lawyer right now, and I speak to lawyers day out, contracts, I should have had watertight, differently worded, and shareholder agreements and negotiation clauses. But you don't, sometimes you are in the situation, take emotion out of it. And by the way, when emotions go up, intelligence goes down. So it's really important whenever you're making big decisions or going through big things, that you're you're in a mindset where emotions are not driving your decision, because that can sometimes lead to bad decision making. And I've done a lot of those over my time. Yeah. So I kind of gone on a few different tangents there, but I hope that kind of gives you something.
Yeah, I mean, I think the environment piece matters so much, right? Like there's kind of the personal growth half, which is like, we've been talking a lot about your journey in terms of using your natural gifts. But then I think what you've touched on nicely here is like the environment in your personal closest relationships, and then that next circle of your relationships, your career environment, it also matters a lot. And I was doing this presentation to a national law firm the other day where like I was talking exactly about how that part matters as much. And so when you're in your career, and if you're in a medium or larger size organization, there's going to be internal teams. Look to the dynamics of how those teams work. Bigger, smaller, friendlier, funnier, need people to like jump in the deep end versus like start in the wading pool. There's no right or wrong answer. The only part that's right or wrong is the dynamic that works best with how you operate. Yeah. Right? Like this is one of the few things where, I've been fortunate to like somehow become aware of this through my journey. Was I used to do very similar to what you said. I would look back at where I'd been successful and thrived in the past. What size of environment? How formal versus informal? How much did they need from me right then? Because that, if you get that environment as close to, your dynamic as possible, you're not fighting against the current. And so then all you need to worry about is your own personal growth story, not also navigating something that's foreign to you. And so I think that you really highlighted that so well about the environment mattering just as much. You've shared like so many tips and like ways of thinking about how you can use your gifts to like how you've done it in your career. If you were talking to younger Rob, who clearly seemed like a very self-aware guy, but if you're talking to younger Rob or anyone out here who's saying like, I have no idea if I can do what Rob can do and feels kind of stuck, what is something that you would tell your younger self to like help move to that next phase of like trusting your gifts?
I'm going to give tough love, because I think a lot of people may sort of expect me to give a very, well-used answer. If it's meant to be, it's up to me, right? There's a quote that one of my mentors said to me, and it's so true. Like if you want to mope around and keep moping and not sure, or looking at other people saying, I can never get there, you need to change the record, right? Because sometimes nobody's going to come and save you other than yourself, right? So you need to make sure that you're sitting in a room of people that are going to inspire you, who are going to teach you, who are going to change that way of thinking, who are not going to drain your energy, who are going to really support you. And the second part of that, I would say, is collaboration is domination. So through the podcast, it's been a great way for me to collaborate with people and share that thought leadership. So if you're sort of sat there, oh, I'm just not sure I can get started. Well, reach out to somebody who maybe is ahead of you and collaborate with them, learn from them, maybe look to try and do something with them. Really, really important. So I think I definitely would talk about mindset, because I think it's so important. Even these days when I have down days or backward days, I just remember, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. Like, I need to make sure I can sort this out. I need to make sure I can do this, because I've also got the accountability sign above my head about the legacy I want to live in the digital world that my grandfather left in an offline world.
Right.
So I've got that's kind of there. So think about like why, and have an accountability roadmap. Think about collaborating and making sure that you're always in the right mindset around the people around you, is what I would say.
It's incredible advice, and I remember when I was first building my LinkedIn journey, and in the earlier days, because it's newer, sometimes you feel stuck.
Yeah.
Or you feel like, does this even matter? Kind of what you said earlier. And what I used to always tell myself, and sometimes I still have to, is take the action. It doesn't matter what the outcome is. The action is the win. Because it doesn't matter about any single individual post, any single individual anything. It is the collective of your actions that are going to move you forward. And you have no idea who's going to resonate with that and pick it up and want to collaborate with you. So I always tell myself, like, take action, give first. Because as soon as you do that, you're always part of the conversation. You're always refining what you care about. If you sit, like you said, and wait and get frustrated, the magical email just isn't going to come.
Yeah.
You have to give first and take action. And, Rob, I think you summed that up so well, my friend. So I just want to say thank you so much for sharing this time. I know how busy you are and how many things are going on, but, I think your story is it's so incredible. And we hear so much about all of the projects that you're working on, but I really wanted people to also know the journey and the effort that went earlier, continues to happen, the struggle and how you've overcome it, because otherwise people are just seeing, your massive following, all of these projects, and thinking like, how am I ever going to get there? Well, Rob didn't get there overnight either.
No.
And so listen to it back, listen to his tips, listen to his journey, take inspiration from that, because it takes each step, it takes each action, and you just did such a great job of highlighting that, my friend. So I just want to say thank you so much. And for everyone that's, listening to this, whether it's on a clip, whether it's on the episode, whether you're with a friend or by yourself, if it resonated with you, like, let us know. Or if you think it's going to resonate with someone else, like, send it to them, because that's the whole mission of the show, is to help people hear the story in the way they connect with, so they can make their career more successful and feel happier. So thank you, my friend, for spending this time with us.
Oh, well, thank you, Chad. It's been an absolute blast. I knew it would be, but you're an incredible friend, incredible podcast host, and all the amazing work you're doing. So it's been a real, real pleasure to be part of your show. Thanks so much.
I appreciate it. And all the best in Nashville, buddy.
Thank you.